to go through. So let's get started. Before we do actually go into depth in the meeting, we had a devastating year for Fremont Youth Soccer Club. Arune Pruthis had been with us for 5 to 6 years, and sadly went missing after an accident at Cowles Beach. So we just want to take just a brief moment just to remember Arune, and just make sure we never forget that he'll always be our number 9. Okay. Moving on with the workshop. Today we're going to be looking at the following you see on the left-hand side. We'll be covering the club information, the structure, pedagogy, the curriculum design, our development pathway, and then the logistics. In other words, our scheduling, uniforms, and fees. Everyone has been placed on mute. We have Gavin on the workshop. He is taking control over the chat function. So if you do have any questions, please put those questions into the chat and he'll be able to either answer them for you throughout the presentation, or you'll be holding on to them towards the end of the question and answer period. We hope to leave for the last maybe 20 to 30 minutes. And again, this presentation will be provided to everyone following this workshop. Quick brief introduction to who I am. My name is Dyer Redwood. Bit of an old picture, that one, only about 12 months ago. I was 12 months without a haircut. I look like I've aged really badly, judging by that picture. I'm the executive and sporting director of the Fremont Youth Soccer Club. I'm currently going through my master's in advanced performance football coaching through a combination of the University of South Wales and the Football Association of Wales. Hold my Bachelor of Honours in Sports Coaching. I'm a A4B licensed coach for both the senior and youth pathway, and also qualified through a number of the US different pathways for coach education. And I've been lucky enough to visit multiple international academies, mostly in Germany and Holland. Like I mentioned, Gab is with us as well. Just finished his USSFB, so congratulations to Gavin. Just got that news the past few days. So just to frame this presentation a little bit before we go any further, if you have a pen and paper with you, brilliant, fantastic. If you don't, you can also do this in your mind as well. So just take a look at this picture on the left-hand side. It's just a normal picture of a tree. So what I'm going to ask you to do now, just for 30 seconds, is just draw a tree. It'll make sense once we go a little bit further into it, but just do a quick little drawing of a tree. Or just visualize one if you don't have a pen and paper. That's not far. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds. Okay, so no cheating. Stop drawing. The artist in you, hopefully you got past just the very first bit of drawing the trunk. So be honest, what does your tree look like? Does it look like the one in the drawing which you can see, or did you create something different? So does it look the same? Did you remember to draw the roots? The roots is something we always forget. And the reason we're doing this little task to begin with is every single player has their own different roots. We don't know the backstory of any of these players or any of these children apart from our own children. We don't know how long they've been playing. We don't know what experiences they have at home. We don't know if they're able to get enough nutritious food. We don't know the level of education. There's so much we do not know about these children. And they're like these trees. Unfortunately, we look at one player and we try and compare them against each other, but they're all completely different. They're all going to grow in different ways. and we don't know their background. But too often, we compare what we see right in front of us. We don't look beyond what's in front of us. It'd be interesting to know how many people drew a similar kind of tree, how many drew maybe a Christmas tree, a redwood tree, maybe a little bush, because quite often what we'll end up doing is just replicating what we see in front of us. And to kind of expand on this a little bit, if you take a snowflake, it's made up of so many molecules. It's unlikely that any two snowflakes are exactly the same size. And again, the same analogy with a player, but this time from a development sense. Every player has different pillars of development. And there are so many different smaller components of these pillars and structures that no player is ever going to be identical. And even down to the individual, even twins, I made sure to check on this as well. Although we refer to twins as identical twins, they're not identical down to the behaviors. And the environment will affect their behavior. So like this, each snowflake is exposed to slightly different conditions. So even if you start with two identical crystals, they won't be the same. Now, this is to frame our presentation moving forward, because I can't stress enough how important it is that we look at the individual. Even at this specific stage of development, it's still about that individual. Even when we get to performance stage, it's about the individual. So a little bit of brief explanation of who we are. We are Fremont. We are Fremont Youth Soccer Club. Our mission statement is to make sure we provide a nurturing environment for every single soccer player. No matter what level they play at, no matter their ability, we're looking to develop the player down to the human element. We believe that every single player should have the same opportunity to be a club member, no matter what the socioeconomic situation is. No player should be missed out. No player should be cut. No player should be told, you cannot play. Even up until these older age groups of U16, there should be no cutting of players. Our vision as well is that through innovative pedagogical methods, players will be addressed as the individual element made up of complex systems to advance not only the soccer playing ability, but also the development as a human being. This is holistic development, looking at the psychosocial element of an individual's growth rather than just the technical and tactical. This information as well can be found on our website. I'll be sharing different links as well with you following this presentation. And for that, we have our core values. There's a lot more information on this again on the website. Here you can see just a grouping of three main concepts of core values. And what we did is we researched what is Fremont. How can we be the Fremont Youth Soccer Club and not represent Fremont? We have to make sure that we represent what the city stands for. And when you look through its history, the different things that have made Fremont what it is today, it's actually really impressive, and it's probably something I should have researched long before we did this. So our core values are, like I said, grouped into three different areas where we look at the empathy, community, and inclusivity. So as a soccer club, do we hold those core values? Do we understand everyone's situation? Do we act as a community and come together in those moments of need? And can we include everyone in what we do? Then there's the creativity, innovation, and empowerment. So through our different teaching methods, can we empower the individual to be the decision maker and be creative in their solutions? We don't want 300 identical players. Far from it. If we have that, we failed. We want to have however many 300 to 400 completely different people who found their own way through youth soccer and youth development, to find themselves, to be able to express themselves to who they want to be and within that soccer context. And at the same time, it must be fun, with a level of commitment and striving for excellence, not perfection, looking for excellence. When we strive for perfection, we're never happy. But what we're looking to is see if can we excel in our chosen sport, in our chosen disciplines, and can we combine that together? Because if we don't have fun as we do it, then really, what is the point in doing it? It should be about fun, and especially in the youth soccer domain, or youth development even as a whole. And so with that, we do have our non-negotiable behaviors. I'll be the first to admit I haven't done enough to make sure that these are followed through. I need to be better at this. And that's something which I've reflected on through these last 18 months. Are we really making sure that everyone's behaviors align with our expectations? They're also going to be different for the different stages. So again, if you go onto the website, you'll see what was expected of the fundamental and performance stage. But for the purpose of tonight's workshop, we're just going to look at a specific stage. For us, the non-negotiable behavior is to compete, not to get confused with winning, not to be confused with doing whatever it takes for a desired outcome. That becomes a win at all cost environment. That becomes outlet. It becomes an adult environment. This is all about the youth player, the child environment. So to compete, we're talking about, can you compete against yourself? Can you set your own goals in areas which you know that you can become better with small incremental progressions? Can you collectively, within the group in which you're in, support each other to find success through the effort that you put in? So together, can you compete against each other and with each other? So a collective approach to optimizing performance. Then also being process driven. So are you committed to your individual development with setting your own goals and reaching those targets? This is what we mean by compete. And you're going to hear me say this over and over again. This is a youth environment. It's about the youth player, not the adults. We're the worst ones when it comes to this environment. Okay, so what is our club structure? So I don't know if many people know how we're structured. It can be very confusing, there are a lot of different arms that come off, but we do start with our executive board with the supporting community advisory group. We then have our two areas of directors where we have a director of soccer and our director of operations. For me, I fall under the executive director and also the director of soccer. And we then have our developmental stages directors. Like I mentioned, Gavin's on this workshop. He's the director of the specific stage of learning. We then have Travis, who's in the fundamental stage. And we also then have directors also in our other pathway, the grassroots pathway, who run those programs. So there's always a linear approach to how we can help and support each other. There's two separate pathways of the grassroots and recreation. This is what you do from the U4 up to U8. It's up to you then as the parent as to which direction you want to go in, whether you want to go towards the club or you want to continue on with grassroots. The reason I put the two names down here is because competitive is a dreadful name for youth soccer. As we just mentioned, competing should be against yourself, making yourself better. But the culture we're in, sadly, it's about competing against everyone else, measuring yourself against everyone else. I've literally just finished writing a presentation for my master's on the issues of specialization in youth sports as a whole. And all the research, and we'll cover some of this research as we go through the presentation, is pointed to how detrimental specialization is. And so what you'll notice as we go through this presentation to curriculum design, we're trying to address these issues, and we've been trying to address them for many years. But what we're hoping now is a few small changes, we continue to do better. So the one thing I know everyone's asking is, well, what do all these different teams mean? What was the point of the evaluations? Well, for younger age groups, the evaluations were pretty much an opportunity for people to evaluate us, to look at what we're doing, to see if they want to be part of the program. Because like I mentioned, no one in those younger age groups should be evaluated, really. Everyone should be given the opportunity to grow. But into the U13s through to U16s, and that's the 2009 and 2006 born, where we look at the club program, you'll be in weekend games. This is participated through the NorCal Premier Leagues. We'll be entering State Cup for those U14 and older. And there'll be multiple teams within your age groups, obviously pending the different player numbers. And we'll touch upon that a little bit later, also a little bit deeper. Here, you're assigned to teams based on reference to the player development pathway. We've changed the names of our teams. We're no longer going to call them Premier and Elite. It gives a false narrative of the purpose of youth soccer. It makes us think of the 12-year-old as Lionel Messi. They're not. They're on the development pathway. They're trying to progress through a roadmap to where we have a game plan which we have expectations of players to reach. So when you look at the team assignments, it's not about who's better, who's the best, who's good, who's bad. It's far from it. It's where are these players within that individual development pathway. And think of this development pathway as like stocks. The stocks are going to rise, they're going to fall, but generally, in theory, they should always improve, but at different rates. Next, we're going to touch a little bit on the senior program. because that's going to give you a little bit of insight, into the progression as you go through the age groups. So our senior teams, currently the 2005 and 3s, they are also the club program, playing the weekend games, participate in State Cup, but they will do a card showcase and they'll travel down to San Diego for that in November on the Thanksgiving weekend. There's multiple teams in age group, again, pending different player numbers. And this time, again, they're assigned in reference to the player development pathway. Sorry, guys, I'm getting a message that I lost audio for a little bit. Gav, can you let me know if the audio's back? Whether you come off mute or just text me. I got my phone next to me in case you need to reach me. Gav, you all good?
Yep, all good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hopefully what I was saying will also get recorded for later. And then in addition, we also have our training pools. This is available to the players that join a little bit later, who want to play soccer, want to develop the soccer skills. And again, we believe in trying to provide an opportunity and a place for everyone to be able to play in. Oops. Here we go. Okay, so down to the team names, the meaning, and what's important about the different team names. So every team is originally based on the year of birth, then the gender, and then assigned to a team. ID is identification. So you'll notice that maybe your name is Fremont YSC 08, that's the year, B, boys, and then ID 1 or 2. This is, you've been selected through the identification. Based on that, we've identified an area of the current development in reference to our game model along the individual development pathway. It doesn't mean you're the best player, doesn't mean you're the worst player. It means you've been identified as showing growth or high potential in one of those areas. Selection is when we've selected a player based on the environment we believe will best suit their needs to be able to improve. Again, moving away from elite, premier, and blue. All the research, all the literature, it goes against the way it used to be. But like I mentioned, we're fighting a culture in youth sports which is led by the adults. So we feel it's important to make these changes because this is what the actual players need. The older players then in the performance stages, they refer to as our seniors. This is the team that represents the Fremont YSC game model. These are the players who've displayed high potential in all the individual player elements and have demonstrated a game understanding within performance of the game in relation to our model. Okay, Johan Cruyff, absolute legend of the game. The inspiration for Pep Guardiola. And if you go through all of his different quotes, which he's come up with over time, research is now catching up with Johan Cruyff. He was way ahead of his time. And he says it best, teams don't learn. It's the individuals within the team that learn. Development is a personal process, even when conducted in a team environment. Even in this moment, he's still speaking about the senior level player. Through my different travels to different academies, my current experiences on my masters, and getting to see a little bit of insight into teams like Southampton, the Welsh national team, the Cardiff City setup, even at that elite professional level, they still focus on the individual. The team is a concept. The team is a game model. It's at that level you start to use tactics, obviously with more high level money involved. It does become about winning. Some clubs might still do focus on the development because the model they have of developing players to sell them on in future. But ultimately, oh, there he is. But ultimately, it's still about the individual player. So again, the team placement is not best, better, or bad. The individual is our focus and not the team. Success in youth soccer is not defined by winning elite trophies, the elite leagues, or the bracket you play in. This is something I am strongly opposed to, is how we are evaluating players and judging players based on the trophies they win, based on the leagues they play in, or the brackets they're representing. A bracket doesn't represent an individual. A bracket doesn't tell you the rate of development of an individual. In the youth soccer environment, the maturation rates is a big indicator of where you're going to play. Bigger, stronger, faster will generally be in what's perceived as the higher level brackets. The maybe smaller technical player you'll find in the lower brackets. You'll also find the philosophy is going to affect the bracket in which you're placed in. It's the responsibility of directors to enter into different brackets. If you have a developmental philosophy, you're approaching the individual, you are not going to be able to win many games to find your way through into these higher level brackets. It isn't possible, because when you're developing the player, you're willing to take a risk. You're willing for them to make a mistake on the field and coach the player, to give them feedback, to give them direction, not to shout at them, not to sub them off because you conceded a goal, but you're there to provide them with guidance, provide knowledge in which they can take that knowledge and mold it to how they want to develop in towards the future. So like I mentioned, we're working against a culture that does not represent the interests of the youth player, but is adult driven. And sadly, it comes down to money. So just to break it up a little bit, and just to see what your interpretation or what your understanding currently is of the environment within youth soccer, I'm just going to put up a quick poll. So here we go. And also while we take this poll, where is my poll gone? Here we go. Okay, launching the poll, and I'm going to turn off that baby monitor. Just can't get away from it. Here you go. Just going to give you a minute. No cheating, no Googling. Just drop in your answers, and let's see how we do. Okay, we started to get a few answers through. Let's give it another maybe 45 seconds. Now I can really see how many people have fallen asleep. Okay, that should be enough time. Still dropping a few answers if you haven't done so yet. As you can see, question 5, a little bit of a trick question. It's actually going to be Dan James, but we can debate that another time. Oh, a few people are still putting their answers in. There you go. I'll give you another 10 seconds. So it looks like 33% of the people logged on have fallen asleep. That's not bad. It's less personal when I can't see you in the back of the room sleeping. Okay. Right, ending the poll. Oh, there we go. Right, I'm just going to share these results with everyone as well so you can see what we came up with. Okay. Here we go. So question 1. How many youths play organized sports? 45 million. Not too bad. 33% of people got that question right. So within the United States, close to 45 million youths between the ages of 6 and 18 are participating in some form of organized sport. Okay. Right. Question 2. This may seem doom and gloom, but there's a reason for it. What is the annual dropout rate between 10 and 19-year-olds? This is where we start to get towards those alarming statistics. The dropout rate is just short of 24%. And that's an annual dropout rate, and that's consistent from 10 to 19 years old. So it's not 24% of 10 to 19-year-olds. That's 24% annually are consistently dropping out. That's pretty bad. It's not good at all. Okay, next one. What percentage of players go on to college soccer from high school? So 37% of children have ambitions of becoming a college athlete. That's quite a large number. But only 5.6% of males and 7.2% of females go on to college soccer from high school. That's not from soccer as a whole. That's what actually go into college just from high school. That's a very small number because the main pathway still throughout the US is through high school. And only 1.9% of these players that go into the college system will actually go on then to play professionally. So 98% of players right now in the NCAA will not even go on to play professionally. Hopefully this is starting to frame put everything into perspective a little bit. And the last one, what percentage of high school athletes receive athletic scholarships? Again, just 2%. It's such a small rate, yet clubs and sports organizations are still selling this as the reason to play youth sports. They're still fanning the flames of early specialization, of investment of parents and players into doing only one sport to chase the dream of the athletic scholarship. But again, only 2% of high school athletes are awarded those athletic scholarships. This isn't to be all down and miserable about youth sports. What this is doing is trying to frame it. Like I said, we're fighting against the culture of an adult-led program, which is meant to be designed for kids. So what we need to do is make sure all of our expectations are in line with the reality. Otherwise, what we're going to do is make it a really miserable experience for the youth player. So as you can see here, it's been identified as a disturbing cycle in youth sports with increased competition and pressure at younger ages and lower levels of play becoming more prevalent as the perceived need to specialize and compete year-round to keep up with peers becomes more common at younger ages. The age group all of us are in right now for this workshop, the specific stage, you would have come out of that earlier sampling stage. The sampling stage is, that's that fundamental stage, is where you should be playing multiple sports. You should be getting exposed to different sport experiences, different motor skills, assimilating them into soccer, sorry. And now maybe you drop down to maybe one or two sports. New Zealand highlighted this, and the New Zealand All Blacks are the top national rugby team in the world. Their club teams are absolutely phenomenal. South Africa are current World Cup winners, but the New Zealand All Blacks, they're on a whole new different level. But even they could recognize from such an elite nation that there was something wrong. They weren't seeing the participation numbers coming through anymore. They weren't seeing the elite players going on to become even better. It stagnated. And it's not just there either. It was actually witnessed in the NBA. And between US basketball and the NBA, they've done something similar to what New Zealand have done. But this is what they recognize, that young people play sport to have fun with their friends. That is the reason why the kids play. If they stop having fun, they stop playing sport. Focusing too early on just one sport, put winning before skills development and making young people train like professionals, these are all the problems. These are not the solutions. These are not the reasons. This is not, it's not the solution to wanting to become an elite athlete. It's the opposite. It goes against what you're trying to achieve. And the science is out there. The research is out there. We're going to be touching on that again as we go through. And like I mentioned before, this is just going to be a surface level workshop. We'll be going into more further detail in these different areas. So now we're just going to touch upon our pedagogy, the reasons to why we do what we do and how we do it. So first we have to address what actually is learning. So learning refers to a more or less permanent change in behavior which occurs as a result of practice. So what we're looking to do is try and affect that individual's behavior to where we can see a difference in what they're doing. So if a child comes into the program, they're not used to it and they can't dribble, and then 6 years later they still can't dribble, then quite clearly there has been no learning. So we have to address then the different kind of pedagogical methods to to best suit the youth athlete. Basically what pedagogy is as well is the foundation of effective teaching and coaching and physical education and youth sport. But in order to be able to really provide that opportunity for the players, there are 4 key areas for youth players to be able to learn. First of all, it's the teachers. And for us, I mean, all this is going to be translated into the actual soccer specific environment. Teachers, in other words, the coaches. Coaches need to be lifelong learners. Coaches need to be coaching within context. There has to be a reason, a framework for what we're doing. And coaches can't stand still. They can't get their qualifications from back in 1970s, and that's probably only relevant to Butch, and then not continue with any further development. They have to keep learning because things progress. Then it's the learners, for us, the players. Is it about the player? Is it player-centric? Do we empower the player to be the decision makers? Are we allowing them to guide their experiences? Then it's the task that we present. That's our curriculum and session design. So are the conditions or the challenges that we set within practice, are they appropriate for the level of the player, the age of the player, for the stage of their development? And then obviously the environment. The environment is huge. That's the environment of the club in which we present, that being a developmental, holistical approach to youth player development, not a win at all cost environment. But also it comes down to the interactions between youth players and their peers, their coaches, and also you as parents. So together, we have to make sure that this environment is one in which the players are able to flourish in. So an emphasis on how individuals accrue and develop their knowledge and understanding through their reflective participation in authentic situations and interactions with others is a key element of our pedagogy. What we have is a constructivist theory. This involves scaffolding and empowerment. It includes much, 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 much more. Constructivist is an umbrella term for many different learning methodologies. And what this is, the constructive theory is basically knowledge is constructed by learners as they attempt to make sense of their experiences. So this statue you can see below, it's not about molding the player. Like I said earlier, we don't want 400 players that look identical, act identical, think identically. We're guiding them. We're going to guide them through the pathway to become their own decision makers. If we have players on the field shouting over to a coach what to do, or looking to the coach for what to do, what decision to make, or to the parents, then we're failing. We're failing badly because we're not empowering the players. We're not giving them the opportunity to develop, the opportunity to grow, and to gain much needed confidence and motivation, which is through that empowerment methods, to be able to really go into not just elite levels of play, but also develop that human element as well, which will also bleed into their schoolwork, their future careers. So everything which we do with them right now has to be more about the youth as an individual, as a human, than it is about just being a soccer player. And those pedagogical methodologies and learning theories, that's what shapes our curriculum. So we have the curriculums divided into 3 stages: our fundamental, specific, and performance. And for today, we're looking specifically at specific stage of learning. It's still about individual development. The first session of the week is their individual development plan. So that is going to be a session which can be assimilated then into future sessions to be able to achieve the objective of whatever the playing concept is. Again, we're not going to go too deep into all of this. We're going to go through it fairly quickly because it can get very, very deep, even deeper than what we have on screen. But we want to give you an understanding of what it is and why we do it. So the first session is based on the individual development plan. The second session is scenario-based learning. This is part of that constructivist learning theory, where we use multi-directional games and problem-based learning, rondos, and small-sided games to be able to simulate a situation within what you'd see in a soccer game. It's where players can take what they learned in their individual development plan and they can then assimilate it, accommodate it into their scenario-based learning. And we still then have deliberate play. Deliberate play is so important for youth players. In our fundamental stage, we're now going to be doing multi-sport every single Thursday. So it's going to rotate between soccer, field hockey, tag rugby, and handball. For the later ages, the U13 to U14s, you'll be doing every other. So you'll do soccer, tag rugby, soccer, field hockey, and it's periodized and it'll repeat. For the U15s and upwards, you will be doing soccer, but again, through a deliberate play structure. Basically, it's where the players lead it. Coach is there just to facilitate, just to be available if needed, but this is as close as we can to recreate street soccer. And how the curriculum is then structured, you have 4-week training blocks. These are periodized to address psychological development and also the playing concepts, all done through the multi-directional games, problem-based learning, rondos, and small-sided games. This is where we can then use those constraints and restrictions to assimilate technique into an actual game-based scenario. And then our deliberate play for the proper age-appropriate and child-centered learning. And then there has to be a reason for why we do it, and it has to be based on theory. So combining personal engagement in sport with early sport sampling promotes rewarding youth experience and long-term sport success. That sampling is what we do on a Thursday. It should have already happened, but it's what we're going to be doing on Thursday to move forward. If you take a look at the study just below, I didn't reference this. It's from Molokin. I can't remember the year, but I can make that available for people. What they found was that play had a significant role in the development of world-class German soccer players. So this is the elite of the elite. Only 14% were ever involved in drill-like technical skills or conditioning. What they found was 86% were involved in this coach-led play. So a little bit of deliberate play, usually it's peer-led, but often as well it can be coach-led. But 17% was coach-led. This is those conditioned, small-sided games. Yet 69% developed their ability through just kicking around with their friends. It's something we don't see anymore. And again, it's part of that culture we now find ourselves in. Through fear of allowing kids to go down the road, to go play in the park on their own, through the fear of missing out, where we feel they need to be in sports programs because that's the best place for them to develop, and basically from the lack of education engagement of youth sports program leaders and coaches in how to truly develop youth soccer players. Kids just need to play. It's a huge part of the development. So what is our development pathway? So this is our game model on the left. All this again is on our website. We publish everything. We feel it should be shared. There's a few little things we don't put out there, but most of it is available to all the parents. To be honest, if you're going to recreate this, you really need to know what you're doing. So if anyone wants to take it and try and use it, it's not going to be of any use to them unless they really know how to implement it. So this is our destination. The game model is where we want to get to. The developmental pathway then is the road we take. There's going to be a few little speed bumps where we need to really press on someone's development, find a little bit of tactical failure where they're going to struggle through it so they can continue to reach and grow. Part of that scaffolding theory where we get in close, we support them a lot, then we step away, we allow them to fail, and then we go back in and provide that little bit of support, a little bit of guidance so they can find the solution to the problem they faced. And what this does is this gives us a bit of a guidance. And through all this, you'll find individual player elements, playing concepts, playing objectives, and principles of play. Again, we'll go into this just briefly to begin with, something we can go into deeper at a later time. But these are our principles of play. The principles of play are basically how we achieve our game model. So for example, with that game model, you'll see on there, it says something about going 1v1 in wide situations. That doesn't mean every time we get the ball, we have to give it to the wide player and they have to beat a player 1v1. What it means is if we can't play through the units, which is another one of our identified elements within the game model, if we can't go through the units, then we'll go out wide and we'll try and beat the players 1v1. So as you can see, these different principles of play allow us to do that. So create and exploit and overloads is how we can try go through the middle of the field through using triangles. But if it's not going to work, can we find wide areas where either we can go 1v none, so maybe we've compact the opponents and give them space for players out wide, 1v1, or maybe even get 2v1s pushing on fullbacks, just as an example. But to achieve that, it's going to take switching the point of attack. So again, these are different principles which we look to see within our approach to play. And this is, again, how we identify our teams and what you should see on the field at the senior level. We have videos of our seniors playing as well on our website, which identifies this. And this will differ as well from the younger age groups. There's also a video on our website about the identity play with our younger age groups. We should see confident players who want the ball at the feet, willing to go 1v1, and are capable of beating players in the 1v1. You actually find the video shows a few demonstrations, not just beating the player 1v1, but also beating maybe 1v2, 1v3. Will they lose the ball? Of course they will. It's going to. Will the other team win the ball, go down the other end and score a goal? More than likely. Is it of concern to us? Not at all. It's a learning moment. It's how we are trying to get the players to develop. And with that in mind, when we do get to weekend games, we're going to be setting players challenges. Another reason for why we don't want to have parents on the sideline shouting instruction. We're going to be asking them to do certain things in the field. This might not align with what you want to see yourself. The reason we're doing it is because we need to challenge them in different situations. So if we said we want to see how you can pass through the units, we might be asking players in certain positions, what's the most players you can beat with one single pass? So don't just do the safe pass to the person next to you. Can you play a vertical pass that beats 3 or 4 players? Yet they may lose possession of the ball. Now, if we're reflecting from the sidelines, it goes for coaches and parents. If we're reflecting on the sidelines what we want to see in the adult game, then yeah, the safer idea may have been to pass it sideways 5 yards. Is that going to challenge and develop the player in the youth environment? Not at all. They miss out on a learning moment. So it's important to remember that learning is non-linear. It's going to be messy. You won't see immediate improvement. It's going to take time. They're going to learn from those experiences. But it does start to take shape through this age group of the players as well. We must accept mistakes along the way. Hence, a focus on result does not support the long-term development of a player. Winning and results are based on outcome goals. This is an adult's objective. We're based on the process goals, how we can move along the development pathway. So again, like I mentioned, it goes into greater depth. And what we do is we have this for our outfield players and our goalkeepers. And to go even deeper once again, as you see, we have the in possession, out of possession, healthy player, goalkeeper, same principles of play. But what you'll then find is they'll have different playing concepts. Okay, and those different playing concepts will be able to provide the player with an understanding of how to play, how to overcome different scenarios. Now, it doesn't mean every single play is the same. What this means is this is a general pattern of play in which you want to see on the field. But every player will do this differently, and they'll do this differently from their individual development pathway. So when we went through the evaluation, what we do in the evaluation is we evaluate players on their rate of development in reference to this individual player element profile. So what you can see on the left-hand side is a player in the older age groups. This is different from a player in the fundamental stage. There will be crossover because you can't align everyone purely by chronological age. That's unrealistic. It's inaccurate. There's so many factors that go into a rate of development, and age must be considered into not only their chronological age, but also their maturation. That's the biological age. You're going to see a 1 to 2 year swing, both as early and late developers. So you could see a 9-year-old being at the same rate of development as potentially a 15-year-old when you encounter the swing from both sides. And therefore, in a winning culture, it is so difficult to be able to coach the players appropriate for them to be able to develop. Because we all know that if you're not in the bracket, if you're not in the tournament you want to go to, your work friend is going to be gloating about it next to the cooler. Thankfully, with everyone working at home, this will hopefully no longer be an issue. And this is the moment we can really change youth soccer for the better. But there is a lot of pressure on parents, unfortunately, from the perceptions of parents. And again, as program leaders, we are not doing our job. We are not providing the education needed because it's hard work. It takes commitment and it takes a lot of buy-in from parents. Easiest thing to do is lump the big kid up front, big kid at the back, knock it long, chase it, shoot it. Rely on your bigger, faster, stronger players. So we have to define our success. This is how we will be defining our success. The technical development. That doesn't mean they can stand still and strike a ball really hard at an object. Technical development is how they're able to apply that into a game situation. Too much emphasis is actually placed on perfect striking technique. If you can strike a ball perfectly, but you can't do it towards the goal when you're under pressure from an opponent, that's pointless. Technical development is how you apply it into that game situation. Defining success involves empowering the players, creative decision makers. Again, we don't want players looking at us for answers. We want them to find the solutions to their problems. We're there to provide support and guide them along the way. Success is the psychosocial support and engaging with others, and also the psychological support and transferring what they learn in youth soccer into meaningful life lessons. Then the player identification profile, this is what we use during the evaluation, and you're all going to be getting one of these again in the first few weeks of the season, but with areas where you can try and support your development. If you look over in the learning stages, F is for the fundamental learning. They don't go beyond this. For you guys in a specific stage, you'll only be looking at the F and the S, okay? We're not looking right now at the level of concentration in a player this age. That's starting to look towards tactics. We're also not really looking at the aerobic conditioning. Aerobic conditioning is far greater in its potential following puberty. So that's when we start to really look at the aerobic condition of an individual player. And also if you look at anticipation, again, that's more based on tactics. We're not looking to look at the rate of development on players yet in those different areas, but we are in all the others. And if you take a look at the scale at the very bottom, it's not best, good, bad, excellent. It's about showing high potential. They're developing, they're on the correct pathway, or they're in the early stages. It is not fair to say that anyone's excellent, good, or bad in the youth sporting environment. They're all on a different pathway. And on the left, what you'll recognize is these are our A, B, C, Ds. This is how we're able to address the different pillars of a youth of a youth player's development. So, and to back this up, several studies have shown that competitive success at the youth level correlates modestly at best, even not at all, with long-term senior success. So those who are playing Gold, Premier, NPL, Elite level, Academy, it's unreal how many different leagues are now out there, especially once everyone got bored because COVID stuck us in our homes. There are so many leagues, ECNL, NPL, any other acronym you can come up with. That has no bearing on what your player is going to be doing at 18, 19 years old. Research shows more than likely they're going to be one of the ones that have dropped out. That is, early success has been described as neither a necessary precondition nor a valid predictor of long-term success. If you ever get a coach or a program approach you and say, I can turn your player into an elite level soccer player, they're lying to you because we can't predict. We can't even make predictions of 1 to 2 years in advance. We don't know what's going to happen. Remember the roots of the tree? We don't know where they're positioned and where they're coming from. The snowflake, we don't know how the environment is chipping away at them and affecting their growth. So we can't predict that long-term success. All we can look at is the rate of development. And this is so important when we look at how we assign players to the teams we're in. And also when we look at other programs, ODP, PDP, there'll be another one come out soon, I'm pretty sure. They're going to have their own different way of looking at players. If you don't get picked, it doesn't mean you're a bad player. It doesn't mean that you haven't developed. We've had experiences with the college showcase where we walked off the field, a college coach came over, he asked me for the name of 2 players. I gave him the name of the 2 players. I was shocked. I couldn't believe these are the 2 players they identified. I went over to Travis, he came on the trip, I told him what had happened. He was in shock, he couldn't believe it either. I went over to the one player, I told him, this coach has just come over, he's identified you and wants to offer you a place in college. And he just laughed. He said, really, me? I'm like, yeah. And I have a good relationship with all the senior players. I said, yeah, I've known them for 8, 9 years. Yeah, you. And we kind of chuckled. He went, I was dreadful in that game. I was like, yeah, you were dreadful. What had happened though? We scored the only goal. We won 1-0. And the coach had basically picked him on that one goal. There were 2 or 3 other players that made a far more greater impact on the game and actually showed greater game knowledge and understanding in that moment than what the player had been identified as. And it was unfortunately a sad wake-up call of the amount of talent that's getting wasted within the US, and to be fair, around the world. A recent review highlighted that the participation patterns that likely lead to youth success are not the same as those that facilitate long-term development and adult success. So what we're doing right now by forcing kids into specialization, the way we're trying to force them into these higher playing brackets, get your team onto a gold premier bracket because they're the best, it's nowhere near what we should be doing to facilitate long-term player development so they have an opportunity at success at that senior level. And again, just to remind you of the stats, 1.9% play elite professional soccer once they've graduated college. And with no disrespect to the MLS, that's the number of players going into the MLS. Again, without being disrespectful, it's harsh to say it's an elite league around the world. So the numbers, they're not really in our favor. Okay, so moving on to our logistics. This is the bit I'm sure everyone's been waiting for. We make sure to keep it at the very end just to try and keep you engaged. So first of all, our player expectations. Every player must wear a Fremont YSC training jersey and warm-ups to practice. This will be strictly enforced. This is something we've been trying to do for many years. We started to get to a level which was acceptable. Obviously, COVID hit us sideways. We ended up on Zoom, small groups, people were financially stretched. We didn't want to enforce it to a level at which we would have liked to. We understand it's a challenging time right now. But the whole point of the uniform was one, you feel like you're part of something greater than just the team. You feel like you're part of an organization, you're a member of a club. We spoke about those core values of community, inclusivity. That is about being part of something bigger. It's also a safety issue as well. One, to make sure that you wear the appropriate soccer clothing to practice. But also, we don't have our own facilities, unfortunately. I'd love to have our own training venue with an office, our own fields, smaller fields, all the equipment I'd love to have. We play on public fields, public parks. So it's good for us to be able to quickly highlight who is a Fremont YSC player. Every player must bring a ball with them. This is incredibly important. Most sessions are going to be based, especially to begin with, on one player per ball. And even if they're not, when we're doing the small sided games, if you've got one game going on with one ball involved in your game, you're going to spend most of your time going up and chasing it. Make sure you bring a ball with you. Make sure you put your name on the ball. The nice thing about Central Park is it's highly unlikely a ball is ever going to go over the fence, especially in younger age groups. But we also have a rule of the players, if you kick it, you get it. As soon as it's gone over, you go and get that ball. And all players to practice with purpose and respect for others. That doesn't mean they've got to be little professionals, far from it. A great analogy that I got from the Cardiff City head of development was we look at these players coming into our training environment and we look at them as little professionals. The reality is when they leave practice and when they go home, half these kids are probably going to bed with a blankie and a cuddly toy. Now, I wonder if Name Operate does go to bed, to be fair, with a dummy. But elite level players don't go to bed with a blankie and a little teddy bear. That's what kids do. It's a kid's environment. What we mean by practicing with purpose is that they're respectful of everyone around them. They're respectful of the environment and they apply themselves to what it is they're doing. When you apply yourself to something is when you get that intrinsic motivation and that inherent enjoyment and that fun aspect of the task at hand. Games, every player must wear the correct uniform and bring the ball. The uniform is changing this year. We'll cover that soon. Everyone is to arrive 45 minutes before kickoff and be ready for a 30-minute warm-up. The reason for the 45 minutes is because, one, we want to make sure everyone's there on time. The worst thing is when we're 20 minutes before kickoff and we're ringing around trying to find everyone. Where are you? Oh, we'll be there just before kickoff. A part of that time, unfortunately, the players also get dragged into it. We're not going to have enough players. So-and-so hasn't arrived. Not ideal for any player, especially when the game should be seen as a practice environment, where at the same time, even before the game, we're trying to get them ready to be able to go out Yes, compete, but more importantly, be focused on what the task is going to be, whether that's switch the point of attack from one flank to the other before you go into the next half, whether it's beat your player 1v1. 30-minute warm up is important. It does physiologically and psychologically prepare any individual for physical activity. Again, not at the elite level, but it's a very important part of the game. And again, show respect to opponents and referees. Our parent expectations, you are so huge in all of this. The parents, you guide the program. We're here to implement it, but the parents, you're ultimately guiding it. So we ask that you support the players to provide them what is needed to participate, and that is just support and positivity, and get into the field on time would be great. Silent sideline would be perfect. That's preferred, and it is what's encouraged. Not because we hate fun, we're not the fun police. It's because, like I said, we're going to be asking players to do certain things. We're going to be asking players to try and achieve certain objectives within a game. And again, we also want the players to be the decision makers. We have too much adult influence. That goes for coaches as well. There's too much adult influence. It drives me nuts when I'm coaching against another coach, or I should say coaching with another coach, who's just shouting instruction, joysticking the kid on the field. It's not about the kid. It's about them. It's about their ego. It's about their outcome. It's not about the player trying to learn and develop. It drives me wild. Please keep the parking lot a safe environment. We address this every so often. Park into a bay. There's no need to pull up on the road so your kid can jump out right in front of the gate. They're going to be fine. They are more than physically capable of walking a little bit further to the gate to get onto the field. There is no reason for anyone to feel that they have to provide such a comfort for the child that they have to be within 10 yards of the fence. Pull up into a bay. If that means they need to cross the parking lot, jump out and go with them. It keeps it a safer environment. Make sure you update TeamSnap for late game availability. We do need guest players occasionally. Again, we don't think anyone should be specializing. Even at this rate, you should be maybe minimizing down to 1 or 2 sports. But if you have conflicts, just let us know so we can get guest players. We never want a player to miss out because of a family event. There's nothing more sad than when we hear players decided to come to a game and they're going to be missing their favorite cousin's birthday party. Wow. Soccer is not that important. It really isn't. Go and enjoy your family time. Go and engage with the family. Soccer's always going to be there. It's okay to miss a game. It really is. It's going to have no bearing on your future progression. It's actually going to have a positive impact on staying involved in sports as a whole and appreciate the environment in which you're in. And also, please support any kind of game day tasks, setting up the goals, the nets, the flags. That is of huge help to us and of great support. And also, please use our club resources. We have an area of the website specifically for parent education. So we greatly appreciate it if you can go into that area of the website, read up on a number of the different articles we have, research papers. My job is to help with the parent engagement, explain what it is that we're doing. So please reach out to me. I love engaging with parents on this kind of stuff. Another thing which drives me nuts in youth soccer is I try not to get onto a rant. Gav knows about my rants, and some of you also know about my rants. But nothing drives me nuts when I hear a coach say, I had to deal with a parent. You're not dealing with a parent. You should feel privileged that that parent has allowed you to have an influence on their child. A child is the most precious thing to any parent. So don't deal with a parent, engage with them, provide the information, provide support, and involve them within the development process. And if you can't do that, find someone that can help and support. It drives me up the wall. Same as when coaches say they deserve to coach better players. I'm sorry, but it's your job to develop players. It's again, yeah, I'm going off on a tangent right now, but this is something I get quite passionate about. It's our job to develop. Okay, on to uniforms. So the uniform is in on a 2-year cycle. We have an agreement and sponsorship with Adidas. The uniform you can see on the left-hand side, that is going to be our competitive uniform for this season. I think it looks pretty sharp, to be honest. In a change to traditional sponsorship, we're not looking for someone to sponsor us. we are sponsoring the local food bank and the Tri-City volunteers. So proceeds we make from the uniform sales, we will be donating those to the Tri-City volunteers. Like I said, it's on a 2-year cycle. The 2-year cycle starts this summer. What you will need is 2 full uniforms, the competitive jersey, shorts and socks, plus your training top for practices. Training pool, there isn't a training pool this season in the older age groups, not yet. And the training uniform is your training top, the home shorts, and the home socks. The training top never expires. The design is going to change. You can see the Conklin twins finally modeling the training uniforms for us. Jordan, incidentally, is actually going for tryouts with the Oakland Roots, so wish him all the best luck with that. But the training uniform doesn't expire. As long as you have a training uniform, that's fine. If it changes the cut, the design, the color, you don't have to buy a new one. Okay, whatever training uniform has, that's perfect. So the schedules. This is how the schedule is structured and what we do. So it's a 44-week training plan, 32 weeks for those of you who are going to be in high school. The 07s this season, you're in a split year. Some of you will be playing high school, some of you won't because you split over different school ages. So if you are involved in high school, you'll be taking a winter break like everyone else. If you're not in high school, you'll get to continue through. Your numbers will be reduced. We'll look at putting you with other groups. We're doing kind of small-sided kind of activities with you throughout the winter. So those of you who are on high school, you're in a 32-week program. And that will reflect in the fees again, which we'll touch on a little bit. Everyone has 2 to 3 sessions a week. Select program has 2 sessions. The ID program has 3. We also have our open training policy, which when we return in July will be open again following the COVID restrictions. It allows you to make up for any sessions that you've missed. You just let us know what you missed and we'll tell you what is appropriate. You can also have additional practices. So if you do have a young player that's like, yeah, I want to practice every day, just let us know. We'll find an appropriate group for them to be able to go play with. It also supports the development of the players in that we will be identifying further players that we feel can benefit from another group. So let's say that you're a very small player, technically gifted, and you find that the physical challenge is just too much right now. And because that physical challenge, you're not getting enough touches on the ball. We may recommend you train with a younger team. The purpose for that is you're going to get the touches again. You're now physically aligned. The maturation rate is similar to those other players. Okay. It can also mean that you may be physically dominant. Your technical ability is struggling because you rely too much on your physicality. So we may ask you to go practice once a week with the older kids. This way now your technique needs to be on point because you're no longer the bigger, stronger, faster player. So that's the whole purpose of that open training policy. When it comes to scheduling for practices, we are dependent on the facility use and coach availability. Coaches coach multiple teams, and therefore the schedule is going to be balanced between the field space, coaching availability, and ultimately the age of the players. The majority of you here in this presentation with all the players are either going to be 6 to 7:20, 6 to 7:20 or 7:30 to 8:50. We try having all the players as late as possible. Game schedules are controlled by NorCal Premier. The opponents, they're the ones that set the times. This will not be known until closer to the start of the season. So once the schedules are released, we all start communicating and working on these. It's the home coaches that decide upon the time of the fixture, but between the home and away teams, you can come upon an agreement in which between the two teams you can find a more suitable date. So you will generally at the first game of the season be a bit of a rush. Might not get confirmed until 4 to 5 days beforehand, but generally the rest of your schedule will be pretty accurate. There will be changes throughout the season. Things come up, different competitions with the teams. Coaches have games changed. Teams are not meant to change games without giving prior notice or an agreement. Sadly, it does still happen. So sometimes we have to react to that. It may be a case where you have a covering coach or are able to reschedule. But we try to get it as consistent as possible, but it isn't always within our full control. The practice schedule will be confirmed shortly. I'm going to give you a rough outline of what we do know so far and the expected times. But due to the ongoing situation with COVID, we do have quite a number of players who want to return when they feel more comfortable. That could be in July, it could be in September. We don't know. We're going to be as flexible as possible. No player should be punished because of sensitivity to a global pandemic. We need to be as flexible as possible, understanding that everyone's different situation. Some of us have young kids. I know I had my little boy during COVID. Not my wife had the little boy, to be fair, but obviously my guy. So I was very nervous at returning to practice. We have players that live with grandparents. So we completely understand any sensitivity to one's return. So we're going to be incredibly flexible where possible. And so therefore the coaching assignments are not quite yet confirmed. We're trying to get more solid confirmation from everyone who wants to return in the future for future predictions of who will be needing a coach. And it is more than likely we are actually going to need to hire more coaching staff. So the way the schedule works is we're actually going to be moving away from Irvington to be more based over at Central Park as much as we can. Actually, we don't own the facilities, so we're always under the constraints of how they give out their permits. It's a bit of a system which we've got to try and navigate. They only give out the permits 3 times a year. So while we do plan over 12 months, and to be fair to the city, they work really, really well with us. They know what our periodization is. They know how it's structured. We've been using the fields now for 30 years, but actually longer than that. Longer than 50 years. So we have a good relationship with them. There are more sports who want to use the field. That is a challenge. So we're going to be giving up ICP Mondays through to Wednesdays. We're keeping the Thursdays. This is our scrimmage days. So you can see the actual age groups and who will be scrimmaging over on those Thursdays. Like I mentioned, the 10, 11 boys, you'll be doing a little bit of multi-sport. 6, 7s, 8 and 9s. Sorry, the 8 and 9s will have a little bit of multi-sport once in a while, not as much. 6s and 7s, you will be doing the small side deliberate play games. 2006s, we'll be identifying a few players and we'll actually be asking you occasionally to practice with the senior group. So part of the whole purpose of a long-term development program is to recognize those players who do show a pathway along the development plan is, oops, sorry, my laptop just froze. Can we go back? There we go. Those 06s, we will be asking them to go and practice with the senior team, and the same for any of the 07 girls as well. Give them a bit of exposure with our senior team. What we do know is, in case you do have younger players in the program you missed yesterday and you chose to do this one, the U8 training pool is always the same. Mondays, Wednesdays, never changes. We use Central Park Mondays to Wednesdays. Thursdays right now, we only have access to the grass thanks to cricket, but we're anticipating we will be back on the turf for the seniors. And at that time, the seniors will move from the 6 p.m. time slot back up to the 7:30 p.m. time slot. But the seniors will always be a Monday and a Tuesday from 7:30 to 9 p.m. The reason is for their periodization. As you're getting older, you're more likely to suffer injuries, so we need to manage that. We do an excellent job managing that with our Monday integration session, where we do a little bit of injury prevention. Tuesdays is our kind of development plan, where we work on different player concepts and individual player elements. And those Thursdays is heavily tactical, where we can talk about the objectives for the upcoming week. That doesn't mean we respond to who we're playing. It doesn't respond to results. We are proactive in our program through every single age groups, and we stick to our philosophies and methodologies. Then goalkeeper practice, that will also be returning. And again, this is the breakdown of the age groups and times. Same thing with the goalkeepers, now 06 age group. So really specifically for Zayden next year, he'll have the opportunity to go to goalkeeping practice. But again, we'll be inviting Zayden out, or any other goalkeepers, in fact, in the age group. Zayden's kind of the main keeper there to practice with the senior players. Okay, finances. I promise we're coming to the end. All fees are collected through Team Snap. Installment payments are over 11 payments if you're on the ID. For 166 for training pool and selection is 126. The installments are withdrawn monthly, but these are not aligned to the actual calendar month. They're aligned to the 4-week training cycles, hence the 11 installments because it's a 44-week program. High school will be 8 payments because it's a 32-week program. You may find yourselves at times you are paying for upcoming sessions. Sometimes you'll be paying for previous sessions. You'll be noticing that now over the next month. Some of you, your payments have already expired, yet you're still training. Could have expired a month or 2 months ago. Some of you will still maybe have a payment due in July. That's still paying for what we're doing in June. It's not because you're behind on your payments, nothing like that. It's just because your first payment is always your membership fee of $200. Your first training fee doesn't come until 4 weeks later. So sometimes you could have been involved. If your membership is a little bit late and it's partway through a training block, you could be 6 weeks into training and still not yet made your first training payment. And that's why then they fall a little bit behind within those calendar months. You're only being charged for the active 44 weeks in the program or 32 weeks in the program. Your membership can be cancelled at any time. We don't believe in locking you in financially for long durations. I don't believe that's right. It's an unnecessary stress to put on families, hence the 11 installments. We do have our long-term commitments we do have to stick to. We're committed to our financial aid program. We're committed to the coaches. We also have commitments to insurances, US Club Soccer, facilities, our office. We have many additional payments that we are committed to. So all we ask for is a 1 installment penalty for early cancellation. So if you cancel in week 8, you'd have had to have paid up your 2 installments of training fees plus 1 as the penalty for early cancellation. If you decide to rejoin later in the program, your fees are prorated and you're not charged for another membership fee. Your membership fee covers you for the entire 12 months. As I mentioned, no player should miss out on fees due to financial hardship. We are a financial aid program. The only person that will see that is going to be me as the executive director. Completely discreet. I work with you on what is suitable for you and your needs. It doesn't have to be down just to purely what your income is. We all have challenging times. It's up to us to work with you to find what is a reasonable amount to help support you with that financial aid. All your payments as well go central into the club. So after you make your payments, you're not charged for anything else. The tournaments to which we enter, which are our own tournaments, you'll not charge an entry fee. Stake Up, we don't charge you for that entry fee. The referees, the coaches, we take care of everything centrally. We pay everyone from a central location. Even with the showcase, we pay for the hotels and the bus journey for the players in that showcase. One reason is because we're giving back. You invested in us for many years. We feel it's the least we can do after you've been with us for so many years, and to provide you with what was an incredible weekend last time. And also, this doesn't apply to anyone unless you do have older kids in the program, but anyone that graduates high school and has played the 2 previous seasons with us, you can still play with us. You're going to be eligible by age, and that's going to be completely free. Just before COVID, we'd awarded over $70,000 in financial aid for the season. And then even when COVID kicked in, we extended that to cover anyone who had any kind of financial difficulty through COVID. I believe off the top of my head, it was close to an additional $40,000. So in total through that year's 2019 going into the end of 2020, we'd awarded over $110,000 in financial aid. Don't get too excited. It's not like the stimulus check. We don't write a check, send it out to you to cash. What it is, we adjust your training fees from what you would be paying to make it a more suitable and lower amount. So yeah, sorry if anyone's getting excited getting those applications in, it's to help you with your fees. We don't actually send you a check. We definitely don't have that much money. So thank you for attending. Quickly covering what's next. Registration links will be sent over the weekend. This is to confirm your place in the program. This will be due by June the 31st. After that, then places can be given to other players that do maybe come into the program. The reason for the June 31st cutoff date, ideally, if you can do it as soon as possible, that's even better. We have to plan ahead for coaches. We have to plan ahead for competitions. Competition entry is due by July the 8th. So pretty much what we're doing is making predictions as we try to get everything in early, not leave anything till last minute. Same with the coaches. The coaches, some of them part-time, as in they're still in college or full-time employment. A great deal of our coach staff, though, are heading towards full-time. This is the main source of income. And so they obviously rely on this and knowing what it is that they can expect to be working throughout the year. Our registrar, Milette, she'll be receiving your information upon registering. She'll be updating your information and will send you a welcome email. This welcome email will include information on how to order your uniform. That needs to be done as soon as possible. There is a process in which Soccer Pro receive your uniforms, do batch orders, and then send them out to you. It's not through us, it is through that third-party company, Soccer Pro. US Club Soccer made a massive mistake and used a sports engine for their registrations. It cost us so many hours of our time. For Millet, it was horrendous. They've now decided to change it once again to God Soccer. Thankfully, we've been able to transfer a lot of the information into God Soccer, so there shouldn't be too much to do, but you will need to claim your account. Millet is currently going through the training for this as they roll the system out. Crazy enough, they haven't actually rolled the full system out yet. It is stage by stage. They've only just opened up stage 2 as of June the 2nd. So Millet has been very proactive on being on those calls and educational opportunities, and she'll be able to direct you through it. Practice starts July the 26th. We're about to approach our 5-week break. Feet up, relax, forget about soccer unless you're watching Wales in the Euros. The first game is tentatively scheduled for August the 21st. We tried to push it back till after Labor Day weekend because the Fremont schools do generally go back a little bit later than the rest of the area. But we do have to go by what NorCal provide us with. And we are going to be providing future workshops. These future workshops will be covering our pedagogy, club structure, the relative age effect. Again, today was a very quick blast through the different areas of the club, the structure, the methodologies. Just a bit of surface level knowledge, but happy to go deeper with anyone. And again, we'll be doing that through those future Zoom sessions. So just before we end, just a quick little excerpt from a recent research article I was reading up on. Why are we ultimately here? At the very beginning, it says the parent behavior is the issue. It's not, it's adults, it's coaches, it's club leaders, it's the people that put on the tournaments, not specifically you, Gav, but you see these elite, ridiculous tournaments which are now over multiple months, weeks, long weekends. The amount of money involved in youth sports right now is up in the billions. It's fueled by adults, it's fueled by greed, it's fueled by money. And so it's the adults that are responsible, not just the parents. But if you just want to quickly read through this, again, it will be provided to you in the presentation as well over the coming days. We're here for the kids. It's our responsibility to provide a positive experience for the youth player. I can't stress that enough. We don't do things because we have an agenda of any kind. We don't have kids that play in the program. We do this for the betterment of every single kid in the program. We approach them as individuals. We remove our ego. We've won things in the past. We don't brag about it. We don't even post it. We might send out an email just to our membership. Our final season with the seniors, just for a bit of background, we used to lose most of the games, 5-0, 6-0. We win a couple as well. We actually lost a game once. We were 6-0 up by halftime, completely zoned out, lost 7-6. Most interesting game I've ever been involved in. But we don't care about the scoreline. It never was about the scoreline. And I have to give a huge thanks to the parents and the senior team. And some of those parents are actually on this meeting or on yesterday's meeting with the younger kids as well, who believed in the process. In that senior year, even though we still don't focus on the results, we only lost one game all year. Even that game was a pre-season warm-up for State Cup. It was a preliminary game, which we treat as our warm-up game. The first game we play. We don't do any kind of scrimmages with our teams. Everything is kept in-house. We don't do tournaments over the summer. First game of the season, we lost that one. I think it was like 3-2. 2-0 really quickly, just burnt out, just weren't physically fit enough yet. We went the rest of the season undefeated in the Premier bracket. Finished second because we drew a game, and we actually never did play the team that was in first. Absolutely gutted. Would love to play that game. We then went to the college showcase, won all 3 games. We didn't put that on any of our social media. We didn't send that out in our mass broadcast emails. I don't think we even shared it with the rest of the membership. Because what that does, it drives the wrong message. It makes it about results. It makes it about an outcome. For these players, it was about their journey, how they've developed through the ages. The majority of these players have been with us from the very beginning. We actually put together a video of their long-term development pathway, and that's available on our website also. I definitely recommend watching it. It gets me every time. But again, read through this article. It will be available to you. It's about the process. It's about development. It's about the individual player. The sooner we remove the adults' decisions from youth sports, the better soccer will become for the youth player. And as research and theory shows and literature, the elite game at the highest levels will also improve from more players lasting, coming through, and even supporting that development into the elite levels. Guys, thank you so much for sticking with me. I know I can go off a tangent sometimes, something I'm very passionate about. I think the engagement with parents is something critical to the success of a program and a success of the youth player.